You ever try to open an oyster and end up with shell fragments all over your beautiful seafood? Let me show you why that happens and how to avoid the biggest mistake most people make when they're trying to shuck oysters. I see it all the time. Folks grab an oyster, look at it for a second, and immediately attack what looks like the easiest entry point. They jam their knife into the front lip where the shells meet, pushing and twisting with all their might. Then comes the frustration, the broken knife tips, and worst of all, those tiny shell fragments that end up ruining the perfect oyster inside. Listen, I get it. When you're looking at an oyster, that front seam where the shells meet looks like the logical place to start. It's got that little gap, seems thinner than the rest of the shell, and your brain just tells you, put the knife there. But here's the thing. That's exactly where the oyster is strongest. Think about it from the oyster's perspective for a second. These amazing creatures have been around for millions of years. They've literally evolved to keep that front section tightly sealed against predators trying to get at their delicious meat. When you attack an oyster at the front, you're fighting against millions of years of evolutionary defense mechanisms. Let me show you what happens when someone uses this common technique. See all these shell fragments? That's not just messy. It's going to completely ruin your eating experience. Nobody wants to bite down on a beautiful oyster and get a mouthful of sharp shell pieces. Plus, when you force it open this way, you often tear up the meat and lose all that beautiful oyster liquor. That's the natural juice that gives oysters their amazing flavor. The real problem isn't about strength or even having the right knife, though those things help. The real issue is understanding where the oyster's weakest point actually is. Most people are working way too hard because they're approaching from the wrong angle. Check this out. When I put the knife here at the front like most beginners do, see how much resistance I'm feeling? I'm fighting against the strongest part of the oyster's adductor muscle. That's the powerful muscle that controls the opening and closing of the shell. It's incredibly strong for its size. Some oyster species can generate closing forces of up to 40 pounds per square inch. That's why you're struggling so much when you try to pry it open from the front. Instead of fighting against the oyster's strongest defense, we need to work smarter. The secret is finding the oyster's Achilles heel, that sweet spot where it's most vulnerable. Take a look at the back of the oyster. See this small indentation right here? This little spot at the hinge? That's your target. That's where the two shells are connected by a ligament, and it's the natural weak point in the oyster's armor. When you position your knife at this hinge point and apply gentle pressure with a slight twist, you're working with the oyster's natural structure instead of against it. It's like finding the right key to a lock instead of trying to kick down the door. Once you pop that hinge, the hard part is over. I want you to think of oyster shucking more like precision work than brute force. It's about finesse, not strength. When I'm teaching new shuckers, I always tell them to forget everything they think they know about opening oysters and focus on finding that sweet spot at the hinge. Another problem I see all the time is people using too much force in the wrong direction. They stab at the oyster or try to use the knife like a lever to pry it open. That's when accidents happen. The knife slips, cuts your hand, and you're headed to the emergency room instead of enjoying delicious oysters. The technique I'm showing you requires minimal force. Once your knife is positioned correctly at the hinge, it's more about feeling for that weak spot and applying controlled pressure until you feel that satisfying pop as the hinge gives way. Then it's just a matter of sliding the knife along the top shell to cut the adductor muscle, and your oyster opens clean and perfect every time. Now, different types of oysters require slightly different approaches, which I'll show you in a minute. Gulf oysters, Atlantic oysters, and Pacific oysters all have unique shell structures, so the exact entry point varies a bit between them. But the fundamental principle remains the same: find the hinge, not the front. One more thing that trips people up when you're using the wrong tools. First, you don't get a clean opening without shell fragments. Having an actual oyster knife instead of just grabbing whatever knife is in your kitchen drawer makes a huge difference. And third, oyster knives stays intact with short, connected properly strong to the shell that can withstand making for a perfect presentation and without bending or breaking. Introducing Boss Up Great, here to showcase a preview of my AI-driven capabilities. Wasn't that impressive? Did I come across as knowledgeable about what I was discussing? Feel free to leave a comment, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. A big thanks to Oyster Ninja for assisting with this small project. Stay tuned for the upcoming Real Oyster video podcast. Until then, I'll see you in my next video, whether it's me or my AI. Wishing you an extraordinary day.